Okay, environmental biology lesson. I'll complete this under 5 sections. So today I'm going to teach you the basics, right? The introductory part. And the next day about biomes. And after that, ecosystems of Sri Lanka. And at last, the biodiversity and those conventions. Right. So it's better if you can it's better if you have some papers or notebook to note down the important facts. Right. So first you should know what is environment, right? What is environment? Now, when we take the environment, normally, right, when you're in smaller grades, you have learned like environment is the surrounding around us, including those aquatic systems, bearings, everything, right? So in A-level class, the definition is a little bit complex. Environment is the complex of physical, chemical, and biotic factors. Biotic means the living things. Biotic factors that act upon organism or an ecological community and ultimately determine its form and survival. That is the definition of environment. Complex of physical, chemical, and biotic factors that act upon an organism or an ecological community and ultimately determine its form and survival is called environment. Harida? Yes. Then we should know what is environmental biology. Environmental biology, it is a study of environment, right? You know, biology. It is study about living organisms. So environmental biology means the study of origin, then function, then relationship between biotic and biotic, right? Relationship between living organisms, relationship between living organisms and non-living things, okay? Relationships and interactions. And natural history of living population, communities, species, and ecosystem in relation to dynamic, right, changing environmental processes. Scientific study of the origin, function, relationship, interaction, and natural history of living population, communities, species, and ecosystem in relation to dynamic environmental processes. If not, there's another way to define environmental biology. It is the study of different biological components of the environment, right? Maybe biotic components or abiotic components and their relationship with each other. Okay? Yes. Let's note down what the definition of environment and environmental biology, right? First, write down as a question, what is environmental biology? Quickly, what is environmental biology? The answer, the environment is the complex of physical, chemical, and biotic factors that act upon an organism or an ecological community and ultimately determine its form and survival. Question number 2. What is environmental biology? Definition 1. Scientific study of, am I too slow? Am I too slow? Scientific study of origin, function, relationships. Sorry. A scientific study of origin, okay, function, relationship, interaction, natural history of living population, communities, species, and ecosystem in relation to dynamic environmental processes. Okay, definition 2. The study of different biological components, the study of different biological components of the environment, and its relationship with each other and with the abiotic components, right? It may be about microorganisms, plants, animals, right? The relationship between microorganisms and animals, plants, then relationship or the interactions between microorganisms and abiotic environment, maybe soil with water, right? The study of different biological components of the environment and its relationship with each other and with the abiotic components. Then, why we learn environmental biology? ඇයි අපි environmental biology ඉගෙන ගන්න ඕනි? අර 10 වසරේ එහෙම තියෙන්නේ. ඇයි අපි ඉතිහාසය ඉගෙන ගත යුත්තේ? එහෙම තියනවානේ ඉතිහාසය මට මතකයි පළවෙනි පාඩමේ තිබ්බා. So by learning environmental biology, we can understand the structure and the function of the environment. Right? So under environmental biology, we are going to learn about the hierarchy, right? Okay, individual, what is this population, community, biosphere. Then we are going to learn about trophic levels, food chains, food webs, right? These are very important to understand the structure and the function of the environment. Then to understand how biotic and abiotic components of the environment are linked and interact with each other. නැත්තම් මොකද වෙන්නේ? Now we are destroying like a different environmental ecosystem without knowing those things, right? So we can this help to understand the biotic and abiotic components of the environment linked and interact with each other through food chains and those things. Then recognize organizational levels of the environment. Now, if we destroy phytoplanktons, what will happen? Without knowing, we go and destroy phytoplanktons that live in an ecosystem, in aquatic ecosystem. You know, phytoplanktons, even though they are very small in size, right? They do photosynthesis. The carbon sequestration capacity of phytoplanktons are very much greater than carbon sequestration capacity of plants. මොකක්ද ඒ කියන්නේ? දැන් ගස් photosynthesis කරනවා කියලා මොකද්ද කරන්නේ? අර වායුගෝල atmosphere එකේ තියෙන carbon dioxide ටික උරා ගන්නවා. නේ? And it helps to balance the carbon dioxide level in the atmosphere. එතකොට මේ phytoplanktons ලා කියන්නේ ඒගොල්ලෝ වතුරේ ජීවත් වෙන්නේ. හරිද? In the aquatic system, phytoplanktons, they also can do photosynthesis. Right? Since they are very small, their surface area to volume ratio is high. ඒ හින්දා ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ carbon sequestration capacity එක ඒගොල්ලෝ උරා ගන්න carbon dioxide ප්‍රමාණය පරිසරයෙන් ගස් වලට වඩා වැඩි. තේරුණාද? But due to this global warming and those things, what happened is due to this ozone layer depletion, harmful UV rays come into Earth. And those harmful UV rays can destroy these phytoplanktons. Phytoplanktons ලව destroy වෙනවා. එතකොට මොකද වෙන්නේ? Carbon dioxide උරා ගන්න හිටපු කොටසක් නැති වෙලා යනවා. එහෙනම් එතකොට carbon dioxide level එක atmosphere එකේ තියෙන balance එක අපිට maintain කරන්න පුළුවන්ද? බෑ. හරිද? එතකොට ඔය indirectly වෙන දේවල්. So it recognizes organizational levels of the environment, and environmental biology help us to learn about major processes of an ecosystem. It may be decomposition, water cycle, right? The mineral cycles, those things. Then understand how human activities are altering ecological systems. Last, understand how natural changes in the environment affect species and habitats. Okay? තේරුණාද ඒ ටික? නැත්තම් මඤ්ඤං වගේද? ළමයි. Can you understand when I'm talking in Sinhala? Is there anyone who can't understand Sinhala? Okay. Right. Write down third question. What are the uses of learning environmental biology? What are the uses of learning environmental biology? You can write down. By learning environmental biology, we will be able to understand the structure and function of the environment we live in. Specifically to number 1, understand how biotic and abiotic components of the environment are linked and interact with each other. To understand how biotic and abiotic components of the environment are linked and interact with each other. Next, to recognize organizational levels of the environment. To recognize organizational levels of the environment. Third, learn about major processes of an ecosystem. Learn about major processes of an ecosystem. Next, to recognize different components of terrestrial and aquatic ecosystem. To recognize different components of terrestrial and aquatic ecosystem. Next one, to understand how human activities are altering ecological systems. To understand how human activities are altering ecological system. Last, to understand how natural changes in the environment affect species and habitats. Right, now we are going to learn about the organization levels of the environment, right? So the levels of organization include individual, population, community, ecosystem, and biosphere. Right, individual. So in this hierarchy, in this order, individual is the first level. It can be any living organism or any living thing, right? So this living organism, it has its own physiology, right? Then it has its own evolution and its own behavior according to the environment it lives. එයා ජීවත් වෙන පරිසරයට අනුව එයාගේ දිවි පැවැත්ම හැඩගැහිලා තියෙනවා. ඊට පස්සේ එයාටම වෙන් වෙච්ච ෆිසියොලොජි එකක් එයාගේ ඇඟ ඇතුලේ තියෙනවා. හරිද? ක්‍රියාකාරීත්වය. Then evolution. Then The second level is population. So, a group of individuals of the same species. දැන් ඔන්න හිතන්න මෙතන මුවෙක් ඉන්නවා. ඌගෙම ජාතියේ කිහිප දෙනෙක් එකතු වුණාම මේක මොකද්ද? Population එක. Right? මුව කණ්ඩායම. Same species. Population. And they live in the same area and they should be able to produce fertile offspring through interbreeding. හරිද? දැන් පැස්බරා කෙනෙකුයි මුවෙකුයි can they produce a fertile offspring by interbreeding? Can they produce? Can they produce a Can they give rise to a new generation? Right? පුළුවන්ද පැස්බරෙකුයි මුවෙකුයි ගන්න? ඒගොල්ලෝ මොකද? ජාති දෙකක species දෙකක්. So they can't produce a new generation by interbreeding, right? Because they belongs to different species. So population means one or more, two or more, right? Sorry, a group of individuals of the same species that live in the same area and able to produce fertile offspring through interbreeding. හරිද? විදුෂිනී, ශවින්ද and විනෝද් අහගෙනද ඉන්නේ? හරි. ඊළඟ level එක community. ඔන්න population එකෙන් අපි community එකට යනවා. Community means it is a collection of population of different species. හරිද? දැන් ඔන්න මුව කණ්ඩායමකුයි සීබ්‍රල කණ්ඩායමකුයි තව මොකද පැස්බරලත් ඉන්නවා. ඒගොල්ලෝ species කිහිපයක එකතුවක්. And they live in the same area by interacting with each other. Right? Collection of population of different species living in the same area, interacting with each other. Next level is ecosystem. So then, අපි මෙච්චර වෙලා කතා කරේ මොකද? Only the biotic factors. පණ තියෙන ඒවා විතරයි නේද? හරිද? එකම කලාපේ ජීවත් වෙනවා කිව්වට අපි පණ නැති දේවල් මේකේ include කරේ නැහැ. When we come to ecosystem means a collection of communities as well as abiotic factors with which they interact. Communities, communities උයි හරිද? ඊට අමතරව air, water වගේ non-living, right? Abiotic components මේ ඔක්කොම එකතු වුණාම අපි කියනවා ecosystem එකක් කියලා. හරිද? ඊළඟ එක තමයි biosphere. Biosphere means the entire portion of the earth that is inhabited by life. So there are 5 levels: individual, population, community, ecosystem, and biosphere. Individual is the first level. It is an organism who has its own characters in physiology, behavior, and evolution. Then group of individuals of the same species that living in the same area and that able to produce fertile offspring through interbreeding is called population. Then a collection of population of different species that living in the same area while interacting with each other is called community. Then ecosystem is the collection of communities and abiotic factors, non-living environment with which they interact is called the ecosystem. Then biosphere means the entire portion of the earth which is inhabited by the life. Okay, let's move to next one. What are these biotic and abiotic factors? Simply, biotic means living things, abiotic means non-living, right? So, abiotic. These include non-living components such as water, right? It may be physical or chemical factors. Water, air, light, temperature, soil, nutrients, they all comes under abiotic factors. Right? So these abiotic resources can be obtained from the lithosphere, atmosphere, and hydrosphere. Hydrosphere means මොකද්ද? ජලගෝලය. Atmosphere වායුගෝලය. Okay? Abiotic components limit the geographic range and abundance of species. That is so simple. දැන් හිතන්න අපි ගිහින් කාන්තාරයක ජීවත් වෙන්නේ නැත්තේ ඇයි? Why we can't live in a desert? Yes. දැන් අර සහරා ඩෙසර්ට් එක තියෙන්නේ කොච්චර ලොකු එකක්ද? ඇයි ඒකට මරා ගන්න නැත්තේ කවුරු? Why is that? No water, right? Water, is it a biotic or abiotic? It is a abiotic component. So the abundance of these abiotic components limits the geographic range or distribution and abundance of a species. Okay, right. Then biotic components include living things, plants, animals, microorganisms such as fungi, bacteria, protists, etc. Harida? Right. Before moving into the next slide, you have to write down or you can make a short note regarding the organizational levels of the environment and biotic and abiotic components. Quickly. Okay, Vinod. Okay, so we discuss about biotic and abiotic components, right? Simply biotic means living things and abiotic means non-living things. Now, when we come to abiotic things, examples, they can be physical or chemical, like water, soil, sunlight, air, soil, right? So we can obtain these abiotic things from the lithosphere, hydrosphere, and atmosphere. Okay. And the other thing is the abundance of these abiotic components limits the geographic distribution and abundance of species. මොකක්ද ඒ කිව්වේ? Now, can we live in a desert? Are we going to battle to can we live in a desert? No. For example, now there are like very big landscapes like Sahara Desert. No one can live in such a desert because of the lack of water. Right? Okay? කවුරුත් ඒවා අල්ලගන්න මේ යුද්ධ කරන්න යන්නේ නැහැනේ. කාන්තාරයක් අල්ලගන්න. අහලා නැහැනේ නේද? ඇයි ඒ? වතුර නැහැ. එහෙනම් මොකද්ද? වතුර නැති හින්දා geographic distribution එක limit වෙලා තියෙනවා. එතනත් වතුර තිබ්බනම් අන්න එතනටත් ගහ මරා ගන්න බෑ නේද? බෙදා ගන්න බැරුව. So that is so simple. It's really simple to understand. The abundance of these abiotic factors limits the geographic distribution and abundance of species. Then when we come to biotic things, it means the living things, examples plants, animals, and microorganisms. Right, now I want you to make a short note on organizational levels of environment and these major biotic and abiotic components. Quickly. If you have finished, please raise your hands, right? Because there, there's an option, right? Raise hand option. Okay, next one, niche. All right, so niche means it is the role that an organism play in its ecosystem, right? So this includes how this organism get its energy, right? What it eats. Then how that organism pass that energy through the ecosystem. Then how it interact with other organisms, right? Then recycling of nutrients. Then its tolerance to environmental conditions, temperature, right? Then the soil moisture, like that. So simply, niche means how this what an organism what we needs to live and what it does in a particular ecosystem. මොකද්ද niche එකක් කියන්නේ? niche එකක් කියන්නේ ජීවත් වෙන තැන නෙමෙයි. හරිද? මේ සතෙක් හරි organism කෙනෙක් ගත්තොත් එයා යාගට අවශ්‍ය ශක්තිය එනර්ජි එක ගන්න කොහොමද? ඊට පස්සේ එයා කොහොමද එනර්ජි එක පාස් කරන්නේ මේ ecosystem එක තුල? ඊට පස්සේ එයා කොහොමද මේ අනිත් organisms ලා එක්ක interact වෙන්නේ, right? And its role in recycling nutrients and its tolerance to environmental conditions. Okay, like temperature, soil moisture. හරිද? That is the meaning of niche. Then the next thing is habitat. Habitat means the physical area where a species live. Okay. Organism කෙනෙක් ජීවත් වෙන පරිසර කලාපය අපි කියන යා ජීවත් වෙන තැන ඒක තමයි habitat එක. Right? So we use different factors to describe about the habitat. The average amount of sunlight received, then the annual temperature range, annual rainfall. These things describe the habitat. Now, for example, now here in the first picture, you can see a tropical rainforest. It is a rainforest. Everything is green, right? Can you see? But if you look at the fourth one, it is a desert. Not green in color, no water, right? Okay? නිකම් පස් තට්ටු වැලි තට්ටු විතරයි නේද? That means what about the rainfall, annual rainfall? අර රේන් ෆොරස්ට් එකේට වඩා අර මේ ඩෙසර්ට් එකකට හම්බ වෙන රේන්ෆෝල් එක වැඩිද අඩුද? අඩුයි. නේද? එහෙනම් අපිට කියන්න පුළුවන් මොකක් හරි ඒ කියන්නේ මට්ටමක් අනුව මීට වඩා රේන්ෆෝල් එක අඩු වෙන ඒවා අපි කියනවා කාන්තාර කියලා. හරි අවුරුද්ද පුරා වැස්ස ලැබෙනවා නම් ඒව මොනවද? රේන් ෆොරස්ට්. right? අයිස් තට්ටු තියෙන තැනක් නම් අපි ඒ පැත්තට අපි කියනවා ඒවා polar regions. Right? Okay? Can you understand? And also we can divide these habitats based on the temperature range. When you learn about the biomes and ecosystems, you can learn those things. Right? So habitat means a physical area where a species live, and these many factors used to describe habitat, such as annual temperature range, annual rainfall, right? Then the amount of sunlight received each day, those things. And also soil condition, right? Soil condition also another factor. Because now, for example, when we check agriculture, soil is the most important thing, right? The fertility. Then next one, we don't confuse this habitat with the ecosystem. Ecosystem එකත් එක මේක පටලව ගන්න එපා. හරිද? එතකොට habitat එක කියන්නේ මොකක් හරි ecosystem එකක තියෙන එක තැනක්. It's a place. Right? Ecosystem කියන්නේ it includes both biotic and abiotic factors. තේරුණාද? So in the resource book, they have described about niche like this. A niche is the role that a particular organism plays in the ecosystem. Each organism plays a particular role in its ecosystem. In other words, a niche is how an organism makes it living. This involves how the organism gets its energy, which usually has to do with what it eats, right? And how organism pass that energy through the ecosystem. And organism niche also include how the organism interact with other organisms, its role in recycling nutrients, tolerance to environment conditions such as temperature, soil moisture, etc. Therefore, niche of an organism describe what it needs to live and what it does in a particular ecosystem. Then habitat. The habitat is the physical area where a species live. Many environment factors are used to describe a habitat. Right? දැන් අපි ගත්තොත් කන්නెලිය තියෙන ගහකුයි හම්බන්තොට තියෙන ගහකුයි ගන්න. හරි වියලි කලාපනේ ඒ පැත්තට ගියාම එතකොට දැන් කන්නෙලිය කියන්නේ මොකද? It's a tropical rainforest. එතකොට ඒ වැසි වනාන්තරයක හැදෙන ගහක කොළයි හරිද? දැන් organism කවුද? ගහ. හරි? වැසි වනාන්තරයේ හැදෙන ගහේ කොළයි අර හම්බන්තොට වගේ වියලි කලාපේ හැදෙන ගහක කොළයි කම්පෙයාර් කරලා බලන්න. අරයට තියෙනවා වැසි කලාපේ රේන් ෆොරස්ට් එකේ ඉන්න කරන්නේ ලොකු කොළ තියෙනවා. අද කොළ පාට. හරිද? හැබැයි අර කට්ටිය චූටි කොළ. එහෙම නැත්නම් කටු ගස් තමයි තියෙන්නේ. නේද? එතකොට මොකද තේරුම් ගන්න පුළුවන්? ඒ හැබිටට් එක අනුව සත්තු ඒකට ඇඩැප්ට් වෙලා. ජීවීන් ඒකට ඇඩැප්ට් වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. Right? Those are adaptation for the habitat. Habitat is the physical area where species live. Many environment factors are used to describe habitat. The average amount of sunlight received each day, the range of annual temperature, average rainfall. These and other abiotic factors of the environment, such as soil condition, will determine the kind of traits an organism must have in order to survive there. Right? එහෙනම් දැන් මේගොල්ලන්ගේ හොඳ ලොකු කොළ තියෙනවා. ඇයි ඒගොල්ලන්ට ඇති තරම් වතුර තියෙනවා. හරිද? එහෙනම් ඒගොල්ලන්ට හොඳට photosynthesis transpiration වුණාට ප්‍රශ්නයක් නැහැ. හැබැයි වියලි කලාපයේ තියෙන අයට හොඳ තඩි කොළ තිබ්බොත් කොහොමද? නිකන් අර හබරල කොළ වගේ ලොකු කොළ තිබ්බොත් ගිනි කාස්ටකේ ඉන්නේ. තියෙන ඔක්කොම ගහේ තියෙන කොළ වතුර ටික ඔක්කොම අර කොළ වලින් transpirate වෙලා ගහ මොකද වෙන්නේ? It will shrink and die. Right? එහෙනම් ඒක හොඳ adaptation එකක්ද really dry environment එකක තියෙන කෙනෙක්ට නෑ. ඒ හින්දා මොකද වෙන්නේ? They have reduced their leaves. Right? And they have thorns and pricks instead of the leaves. So that is an adaptation for plants that grow in dry environmental conditions. Okay? A habitat should not be confused with an ecosystem. The habitat is the actual place of the ecosystem, where the ecosystem includes both the biotic and abiotic factors of the habitat. Next one, the interactions between abiotic and biotic components of the environment. Now you learn what are abiotic and biotic components. Now we are going to learn about interactions. First one, biotic interaction. හිතන්න දැන් මිනිසු දෙන්නෙක් ගත්තොත් මොනවද තියෙන්නේ? දැන් මේ පෘථුවිය. දැන් අපිට තියෙන resources වලට competition එකක් නේද තියෙන්නේ? ඔයගොල්ලෝ ගත්තොත් දැන් ඔයගොල්ලෝ මොකද්ද competition එකකට ලෑස්ති වෙන්නේ නේ? medical faculty එකට ගන්නේ 1000 ගාන නම් ළමයි ලක්ෂ ගානක් ලියද්දි එතනින් එක්කෙනෙක් වෙන්න. limited resource එකකට එතන ඔයගොල්ලන් අතර competition එකක් තියෙනවා. Then feed-in relationships. Symbiotic relationship between individuals and the species. Feed-in relationship, we can take food chain. Ne? මොකද? කුකුලා ඇවිල්ලා පණුව කනවා, කුකුලාව මිනිහා කනවා, මිනිහාව සිංහයා කනවා. හරි චූටි කාලේ ඉගෙන ගන්න food chains thing. Feed-in relationships. Then biotic abiotic interactions. Water uptake of plant from soil. හරිද? කවුද මෙතන බයෝටික්? ගහ. ඒ බයෝටික් කවුද? වතුර. ගහෙන් වතුර ටික උරා ගන්න එක බයෝටික් ඒබයෝටික් interaction එක. Then abiotic interactions. Chemical reactions occurring in soil. Right? එක එක දැන් nitrogen cycle ඕවා වෙනවා. ඊට අමතරව ඔයගොල්ලෝ දන්නවා formation of rocks. There are a lot of things. Right? Okay. So abiotic, the chemical reactions that takes place in soil is an example. හරිද මේවා අහනවා. Then energy transfer in an ecosystem. Next topic, energy transfer. Now the main energy provider, the main energy source is sun. The primary source of energy for Earth is sun. Okay? So plants, they absorb sunlight and they do photosynthesis. And they store that, they convert sunlight energy into chemical energy and stored in bonds of organic molecules as carbohydrates like starch, right? Okay? And when other organisms, they depend directly or indirectly on these plants, right? Even though like they obtain chemical energy by eating those things, ultimately, right? They obtain their chemical energy by conversion of solar energy or radiant energy of sun to they obtain their chemical energy by conversion of solar energy by plants, right? The primary source is the sun. Plants absorb sunlight and they produce food. Producing food means they convert solar energy into chemical energy, and that chemical energy is stored in bonds of carbohydrates, right? Maybe glucose or starch. So when other organisms, animals depend on these plants directly or indirectly, right? They depend on these plants for what? To obtain energy. They obtain chemical energy. The chemical energy they obtain means what? That is solar energy, right? මේ ගහෙන් ඒගොල්ලෝ ගන්න chemical energy කියන්නේ මොකක්ද? solar energy එක. ඒ ගහ මොකද්ද කරන්නේ? ඒගොල්ලෝ photosynthesis වලදී solar energy එක chemical energy වලට convert කරලා තමයි store කරලා තියෙන්නේ. එහෙනම් අපි නොදැනුවත්ව අපි chemical energy ගන්නවා කියලා මොකක්ද දන් දිනුම අරගෙන තියෙන්නේ? solar energy ම තමයි. So that's why we call sun is the primary source of energy of the earth. Right? Then we have to learn about tropical levels. Now in this one, this is a food chain, right? Food chain. Food chain means it is a linear sequence of organisms through which energy and nutrients pass from one organism to another. හරිද? ඒ කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? දැන් මෙතන this plant, it absorbs solar energy and convert into chemical energy and stored in it, right? In the plant body. And when grasshopper feed on the plant, it obtain energy from the plant, right? When the frog eat this grasshopper, then it obtain energy, right? It can obtain energy, right? So there is a flow of energy from sun to the plant, to the grasshopper, to the frog, and at last to the bird, right? There's a flow of energy. Linear. This is a linear sequence. හරිද? So these organisms, they are called, like they are trophic levels of this food chain. මේකේ තියෙන levels, trophic levels කියනවා. මොකක්ද එහෙනම් trophic level එක කියන්නේ? ඒ feeding group එකට අපි කියනවා trophic level එක කියලා. Feeding level එක. Now when we take the plant, right? It is the producer. It is the producer, right? First trophic level of this food chain. Then grasshopper, it is the first consumer. Second trophic level. When we take frog, it is the second consumer. And third trophic level. And when we take bird, it is the third consumer and fourth trophic level. Okay? So trophic level means the feeding level. The producers as well as consumers can be arranged into feeding groups or feeding levels or trophic levels, right? Normally, the producer or a green plant or an organism who can carry out photosynthesis is the producer or the first trophic level of a food chain, right? Then herbivores, the organisms who depend on plant materials, they are the second trophic level. Then primary carnivores, they represent the third trophic level, and top carnivores represent the other levels. Okay? Right. Food chain, the definition is, it is the linear sequence of organisms through which nutrients and energy pass from one organism to another organism. හරිද? මේ තනකොළ පෙත්ත ගිහින් ගහ කාලා ගහෙන් උරාගත්තු එනර්ජි එක තමයි ගෙම්බා ඌව කද්දි යට යන්නේ. හරිද? නැත්තම් ඊට වඩා ලොකු එනර්ජි එකක් එනවද? නැහැ. හරිද? So always, the next thing is always food chain begins with the primary producer, right? Who can carry out photosynthesis. Okay. Then who are these primary producers? Primary producers means autotroph, as I said before, the organism who can produce their own food by photosynthesis. It can be plants, algae, or cyanobacteria. They can convert light energy to chemical energy, right? Or they can produce organic matter. Then there's another thing called primary production. Primary production is the amount of organic matter, the organic matter produced by autotrophs in a given area during a given period of time. Okay? Then, primary consumer. Now here, the grasshopper is the primary consumer. Primary consumer means the organism who eat the primary producer. Right? Normally, primary consumers are herbivores. Right? It can be an algae eater or a bacteria eater. Next one, secondary consumer. Secondary consumer. Now, in this food chain, secondary consumer is frog. Right? They consume primary consumers. So, they are meat eaters, carnivores. Then third consumer is the organism who feed on the secondary consumer, top carnivores. Okay. Next one, food web. Normally, when we take an ecosystem, we can't find isolated food chain. මෙන්න මේ විදිහ food chain නෑ. හරිද? කුරුල්ලා කියන්නේ නැහැ ඌ කන්නේ ගෙම්බෝ විතරයි කියලා. ගෙම්බ කියන්නේ නැහැ මම කන්නේ තනකොළ පෙත්තෝ විතරයි කියලා. Right? It has different, the frog has different other options also. Right? Not only grasshoppers. So there are no any isolated food chains. But now here, for example, if we take this fox, it can depend on rabbit as well as mouse. Right? Or it can depend on mouse or frog. Right? එයා නැතුව ඉන්නේ මම කන්නේ මේවම විතරයි. වෙන ඒවා නැත්තම් එහෙම කියලා එකක් නැහැ. So in the environment, in the ecosystem, there are no any isolated food chains. Right? These food chains are interconnected and form food webs. මෙන්න මේ විදිහට ජාලයක් දැලක් හදාගෙන තියෙන එකකට එකක් interconnected. What is the use of this one? If rabbits extinct from the ecosystem, will it affect this fox? No. They can feed on mouse. නේද? බැරි වෙලා හරි නිකන් හිතන්න මේ පරිසර පද්ධතියේ මුන් ටික විතරමයි ඉන්නේ. බැරි වෙලා හරි හාව ටික ඔක්කොම වඳ වෙලා යනවා. දැන් මේ නරියා කිව්වොත් මං කන්නේ හාව විතරමයි කියලා. ඉන්න හාව ටික වඳ වෙලා ගියන් පස්සේ මොකද වෙන්නේ? නරියා තිබේම වඳ වෙලා යනවා. Right? හැබැයි මේ විදිහ food web දෙකක් තිබ්බා. මේ කියන්නේ මේ නරියා එක සතෙක් මත නෙමෙයි සත්තු කිහිපයක් මත depend වුණොත් එක සත්තු කොටසක් වඳ වෙලා හරි නැති වෙලා හරි ගියාය කියලා අරයට affect වෙනවද? affect වෙන්නේ නැහැ. It do not affect the balance of the environment, ecosystem balance. So these food webs, it helps to maintain the ecosystem balance. Okay? හරිද? හරිද? Next one, energy loss along food chain. Energy loss. Now, just imagine this green plant, it obtains 1,000 joules of light energy, and it convert that light energy into chemical energy. Right now, according to this figure, it can convert 10% of light energy to 10 chemical energy, and 990 joules of energy lost to the environment. Right? When this herbivore, right, it go and feed on this green plant, right? What happened? Now this green plant have 10 joules. 10 joules. Joule 10ක් යා ගාව තියෙනවා. මේ ගොනා ගිහින් ඌව ගහ කෑව කියන්නේ මොකද? එයාට ජූල් 10ක් හම්බ වෙනවා. මෙයා 10ක් හම්බුණාට මෙයා හුස්ම ගනිද්දී අන්න එනර්ජි එකක් පිට වෙනවා. Right? When during excretion, some amount of energy is removed from its body. So when this carnivore feed on this herbivore, Can it obtain that same 10 joule energy? Can it obtain that same 10 joule energy? No. It obtain only 90%. No, only 10% of the 10% of 10%. Because 90% of energy is lost to the environment. තේරුණාද? තේරුණාද? දැන් මේ ගහ ජූල් 1000ක් අරන් එයා කෑම හදනවා. හරිද? හම්බුණාට එයා 990ක් පරිසරයට මේ රිලීස් වෙනවා. එයාගේ ස්ටෝර් වෙන්නේ ජූල් 10යි. ඔන්න එයාගේ ජූල් 10 මේ ගොනෙක් කෑවහම ගොනාට ජූල් 10ම හම්බ වෙනවා. දැන් ගොනාගේ ඇඟේ ජූල් 10 තියෙනවා. ඊට පස්සේ සිංහයා ඇවිල්ලා ඔව්ව කද්දි සිංහයාට ජූල් 10ක් හම්බ වෙන්නේ නැහැ. එයා සම්පූර්ණ ගොනාවම කෑවාය කියලා. ඇයි? මේ ගොනා හුස්ම ගනින්නේ ඊට පස්සේ එයා එක්ස්ක්‍රීට් කරද්දී right then during defecation what happened 90% of energy is released to the environment only 10% will pass to the next trophic level තේරුණාද එහෙනම් කවුරු හරි ගිහින් සිංහව කෑවයි කියලා ලොකු එනර්ජි එකක් හම්බ වෙනවද මෙතනදී නෑ ඒ හින්දා always a food chain is limited to 3 or 4 trophic levels 4 or 5 hari හතරක් hari පහක් but when the length of the trophic level when the number of trophic levels increases what happens the amount of energy that is can you understand තේරෙනවද the amount of energy that is available for the last trophic level will be very low right අන්තිමේ ඉන්න පුරුකට තියෙන එනර්ජි එක ගොඩාක් අඩුයි තේරුණාද ඒ හින්දා මේ trophic levels 100ක් විතර තියෙන food chains නැහැ උපරිම 4ක් 5ක් තමයි තියෙන්නේ හරිද so shorter the food chain right more energy will be available for the highest trophic level than the longer food chains okay any doubts so I have to do ecological pyramid part so next week I'll do ecological pyramid plus biomes lesson හරිද because now it's 3:27 and time is not enough